to this week's 5 Minutes of American Literature, in which I drop some knowledge that will hopefully help you on this week's quizzes and reading. Let's talk about colonial histories. We will focus on two English narratives of two colonies that grow up at the same time and become major power centers in the future United States. John Smith's The General History of Virginia and William Bradford's of Plymouth Plantation. Colonial histories can give us some useful insight into how colonists interpret their experiences, but they can be difficult to understand when they were not written for us in mind. So we need to be aware of the author's historical and cultural context, the author's view of the world, their purpose in writing, their target audience, and their main message, some of which they may not disclose to us directly. Take the General History of Virginia. John Smith's worldview and purpose are heavily influenced by two things. One, his background in military service and world exploration, and two, his vision of the English position in the world, a vision that was shared by his employers in the Virginia Company. Smith's solutions to every problem are discipline and dominance. We can see the contempt that Smith shows for his fellow colonists, his implications that they lack fortitude and self-regulation, all the confrontations that he had with other counselors, and all the times that he reports keeping the colonists in Virginia at gunpoint. It's understandable that they wanted to leave the mess that was Jamestown. The project was underfunded, the colonists were inexperienced, the counselors were ill-prepared to lead, but through Smith, we see them as this crew of scrubs trying to make a quick buck without doing much work, who are then saved from their own vices by Smith's decisive leadership. Discipline and dominance also describe Smith's vision of England's potential power. We should remember that England was one of the last European powers to colonize the Americas. Projects like Jamestown were wildly expensive in terms of money and manpower. Investors and recruits needed to be convinced that there was something to gain from colonization. And there were few better salesmen for it than John Smith. He makes Jamestown's settlement sound like a thrilling adventure story in which he is the dashing hero. He whips the colonists into shape. He wins over the neighboring natives and brokers peace and trade with them. He tames the Virginia wilderness. And he helps England finally gain a foothold in the New World. If his account is aimed at an English public that was intrigued by colonization, but skeptical of the benefits, Smith offers an appealing vision. With discipline and dedication, England could have a land of opportunity where hardworking, well-regulated Englishmen could rise up in the world. Bradford's of Plymouth Plantation, on the other hand, tells a much different story about a much different colony. Bradford's history is infused by his deeply religious view of the world. He's not justifying his people's project to the English public. Instead, he's reminding his own people of what he sees as Plymouth's divine purpose. Bradford was a separatist, which meant that, unlike most Puritans, he and his sect considered the Church of England hopelessly corrupt, and they wanted to break away from it entirely. To escape persecution, many separatists immigrated to the Netherlands, where they were not warmly received, and where a lot of them struggled to support themselves. What scared them the most, however, was watching their children become culturally Dutch and leave the church. So the separatists left the Netherlands on this dangerous journey that they knew would kill a lot of them. And why? To establish a strictly separatist settlement where they could keep their children in the faith without the world luring them away. From there, Bradford's account reads like an Exodus story. God's people in exile who wander in the wilderness and are finally delivered to a homeland. In spite of all the hardships they face, take note of all the times that Bradford sees the hand of Providence in their strokes of good fortune. The abandoned village that they find, Squanto's arrival, even the deaths of Mayflower crewmen who make fun of the separatists. This religious lens is one that a Puritan audience would appreciate. It's evidence that they're on God's side. And it primes them to heed Bradford's warning about the dangers of prosperity and expansion. Once Plymouth becomes an established colony, it attracts more mainstream Puritans and Anglicans, and Bradford fears the religious diversity that comes with them. In his view, their success has made them too comfortable and has attracted strangers who bring the devil into their godly city. Sees how he explains Thomas Granger's proclivities. By the end, Bradford predicts that his people will enjoy economic success, but at the expense of their spiritual well-being. As literary analysts, we need to remember that narrative reliability is a complicated issue in these works. The authors are bringing their own motives and perspectives to their accounts, and on top of that, they are constructing their stories to appeal to particular audiences for particular reasons. However, if we put ourselves in the author's shoes, we can better appreciate how they tell their stories, and we can better understand the messages that they're trying to communicate. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions, and happy reading. Don't let hard text get you down.